Hello from the KUOW newsroom. This is Seattle Now. I'm Patricia Murphy with a roundup of today's top stories. It's Wednesday, July 2nd. Starting today with more bad news for tech workers, Microsoft is once again cutting thousands of employees. The company said this week it will reduce its global headcount by up to 4%. Monica Nicholsberg reports.
Since 2022, Microsoft and other local tech companies have been thinning their ranks. Layoffs are the new norm in an industry that once had an insatiable appetite for talent. That's creating a jaded workforce, says Samuel So, a University of Washington PhD student who's published research on the tech layoffs.
Specifically, a lot of tech workers were resigned to staying in the tech industry despite this overwhelming discontent. And I think that is still very much the case, especially in the current job market where these mass layoffs have made it really competitive and difficult for workers to find equivalent positions to the ones they were laid off from.
State filings show Microsoft's latest layoff will affect about 830 employees in Washington. That's on top of 2,000 workers Microsoft cut in its home state earlier this year. Monica Nicholsberg, KUOW News.
Tensions around immigration enforcement continue to build between the Trump administration and so-called sanctuary cities. This week, the U.S. Justice Department sued Los Angeles, accusing officials there of, quote, deliberately obstructing the enforcement of federal immigration law. Seattle City Attorney Ann Davison says she's concerned that Seattle could be next.
It makes me get ready, frankly. So I am being prepared, making sure that we are ready. I'm ready to defend the city for any unlawful action that comes from the federal government.
She says Seattle's welcoming city ordinance complies with federal law. It directs city staff not to inquire about someone's immigration status unless legally required. The Justice Department has already sued New York and Chicago over similar policies. Seattle has also joined a lawsuit to challenge Trump's order blocking funds for sanctuary cities. The U.S. Supreme Court's recent ruling on a birthright citizenship case that restricts universal injunctions issued by lower courts leaves some future U.S.-born children vulnerable to being stateless. Tio Popescu reports that advocates for migrants are staking out a new legal strategy.
In the decision, the Supreme Court left open an alternative path for those seeking to block Trump administration efforts to challenge birthright citizenship, a class action lawsuit. Now, some advocacy groups have revised their suits. They're seeking class action status to represent all pregnant people and children born to families without legal status across the United States. Nationwide, about 1.8 million U.S.-born kids live with two parents who are in the country without legal status, according to the Center for Migration Studies. In the states not covered by temporary injunctions pausing the administration's birthright policy, future children born into these families could be denied citizenship. I'm Tio Popescu, KUOW News.
The July 4th weekend is just a few days away, and the head of Washington's Department of Natural Resources is warning people to be mindful about using fireworks. Noelle Gasca has more.
Budget cuts at the state and federal level have placed an added stress on agencies handling wildfires, says Commissioner of Public Lands Dave Upthegrove. A spokesperson for the Department of Natural Resources says the agency has responded to over 600 fire alarms since the start of wildfire season. 400 of those were on state public lands. If you're planning on setting off fireworks this 4th of July, Upthegrove has a straightforward warning.
4th of July weekend is a fun time. Let's not make it a dangerous one. The bottom line is this: don't be an idiot. Don't set the state on fire with your fireworks.
If you're drinking alcohol, don't play with fireworks, Upthegrove says. He says supervise young people handling fireworks and use them in areas they're legally designated. Noelle Gasca, KUOW News.
Former WSU grad student Brian Kohberger has pleaded guilty for the murders of 4 University of Idaho students in the fall of 2022. In exchange, he'll avoid the death penalty. Northwest Public Broadcasting's Lauren Patterson was in the courtroom.
Brian Kohberger looked pale and thin as he sat in a packed courtroom today in Boise, Idaho. He accepted a plea deal in an Ada County courtroom, agreeing to 4 consecutive life terms for the murders of Madison Mogen, Haley Gonzalez, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin, and 10 years for a burglary charge, waiving his right to appeal. Judge Hippler asked Kohberger if he was admitting to the charges.
Are you pleading guilty because you are guilty?
Yes.
The families of the victims who were there were visibly upset as the charges were read. A sentencing hearing is scheduled for July 23rd. I'm Lauren Patterson in Boise.
King County Search and Rescue says it recently received an unusual number of calls for help on Mailbox Peak. The nearly 9.5-mile-long trail is near North Bend. KNKX reporter Freddie Menares has more.
The calls happened between June 14th and the 20th. One hiker fell and needed medical attention. 3 people injured their ankles. Another person didn't have a headlamp when it got dark. Natalie Patterson is with King County Search and Rescue. She says this string of calls isn't the first time rescuers responded to Mailbox Peak this year. Other calls have been for dehydration or leg cramps, signs that people are underestimating the 4,000 feet of elevation gain.
People underestimate the heat. This time of year especially, our bodies are not acclimated yet to that heat. And Mailbox Peak in particular, we get a lot of calls for dehydrated hikers with leg cramps.
Search and Rescue is reminding people to take enough food, water, and supplies on any hike. And Patterson says don't hesitate to call 911 in an emergency. In Seattle, I'm Freddie Menares.
And that's all for today from the KUOW Newsroom in Seattle. Our producer is Andy Hurst, and I'm Patricia Murphy. Seattle Now and KUOW are members of the NPR network. See you later.